Let's get started, guys. We'll have a small group, it looks like, but again, this recording will be in the academy. So thank you all for joining in tonight. We're going to talk about life insurance, which is one of those things I think is really, really important to consider both from an insurance standpoint, of course, especially as you get older and build a family. This is something that's been more relevant to me, but it's also an extremely valuable tool from a tax perspective, a way to build tax-free wealth. I think it's a necessary piece in your overall financial plan, and it can be a very interesting tool to expand your portfolio with. And so this is something that I think is, very beneficial to consider. Hopefully other people are listening where they can chat, but I'd love to hear if anyone, you don't have to put this in, but I'd love to hear from you if you have current life insurance policy. I'm just curious how many people have thought about this, and if you've already set something up, because Chris will go through this, but there's a lot of different ways that you can use life insurance, right? There's term life insurance, there's whole life insurance, which we'll mainly talk about tonight. And there's different providers, of course, out there, and there's a lot of different policies that you can have. And so one of the things to really understand is life insurance, like, are you set up the right way? A lot of people, I think, set up their life insurance and just forget about it. It's one of those things you check off when it's time to do, and it's like, all right, I've done it. And I'm just going to forget about it. But it is something you should probably revisit consistently over time. Chris, well, I'll let Chris, you give an intro about yourself, but Chris is an avid real estate investor. He teaches some classes in the academy. I think it's mainly near month 3. But he's been really a good team member to have, and he's been very educational for me in the overall wealth plan and life insurance for sure. And he does my own personal policy that we set up based on our investing needs. So there's the life aspect, there's the death benefit, but then there's also the investor mindset, right? The things that you can do from an investment side that I think will be, really interesting to talk about it. So, Chris, without further ado, thank you so much for spending some time in your summer with us this evening. So, educate us on life insurance, why we should have it, what is the right way to have or to set it up, and how can it be a useful investment tool?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Zach. And before I start talking about how great I am, I just want to say thanks to Zach and the whole team over at Rent to Retirement. When Zach and I first started talking about helping people, I think that's probably the only reason we agreed to even link up and partner up, was because we just kind of believed in the same things. And I've seen the backside of the real estate world, and I've just never got the positive feedback from pretty much anyone else. And I'll touch on it a little bit later, like I have from Zach's clients. So appreciate you having me on. Yeah, to Zach's point, life insurance is one of those things you think, hey, I got to cross the street and get hit by a bus, and somebody's going to bring my grieving widow a check, right? But as a financial planner, I own my own registered investment advisor. I do all these other things, IRAs, 401ks, real estate, all that kind of stuff. I think the best way to describe life insurance generally is as especially cash value life insurance, is a Swiss Army knife. Kind of like Zach alluded to, there's a death benefit, there's a cash component, there's some healthcare things that it can be done with, but it's a wealth transfer tool. At the end of the day, I was talking to my buddy, he's a pilot, and his in-laws are worth a substantial amount of money. And he was like, man, you know what? If you even just wrote a big check and bought a big policy, even if you lost like $500,000 in the transaction, from a taxation standpoint, you come out millions of dollars ahead. So it's really this, it's this Swiss Army knife. And then Scott, if you want to enable screen share so I can get my PowerPoint up. It's just really the Swiss Army knife that in an overall financial plan, I find is often missing, many times not done the right way, but can actually be very important. So all the super fun stuff that we will talk about, and I'm not going to beat you guys up and talk about it. Everybody on this Zoom call is not going to have to die during this presentation for me to make my point. But from an impact on your overall financial plan, your life standpoint, like if somebody gives me $500,000 to manage, I have to work very hard to double that money in 7 years, right? It'd have to compound at 10% annually. But I have had clients, spouses pass away, and I've delivered them a check for $500,000. So by spending 5 minutes with them, I actually made a $500,000 difference. And then that changes the course of their life, their kids' life, their grandkids' life. So that's the type of impact it can have. Capital Partners Wealth Management, that's my firm. but let's just jump right into it. The parts of the Swiss Army knife that we'll talk about here, the first one is a death benefit. Again, I'm not going to beat you up on this, but at the end of the day, I will tell you, as a financial planner, if I am planning on people's real estate investments and their IRAs and their 401ks going up, and they need $50,000 a year in retirement, and we need to save $20,000 a year for our kids' college and this, that, and the other, and then they actually do get hit by that bus, all of those other things are very hard to do, no matter how good you are with money, if there's no money to do it with. So the death benefit, that pays off if you die. Tax-free wealth accumulation, this directly relates to getting into real estate. I'm going to tie those two things together a little bit more in depth, so I'll just kind of gloss over that. And then generational wealth is what I have discovered in 10 years of setting these policies up for people, is that a lot of times, actually myself included, I'm a very good example of this. We set it up for one thing, but then I'm betting everyone on this Zoom call, and especially if you start building and accumulating properties and that kind of thing, at some point, you're going to end up with these buckets of money where you go, man, I was going to use that thing. I was going to go on vacation, or I was going to buy a rental property or whatever. And now it just kind of sits there. And you know what? I look at my life insurance policy, I log into my online account, and I look at the projections for when I'm like 85. And the feeling that you get by knowing that you're doing something good for those that come after you is as good as like a nice healthy check from a cash flowing property. So that's from like a high level. These are just the pieces of the Swiss Army knife that we get into. But let's talk about what everyone here is to learn about. And that's, hey, I've read Nelson Nash's Be Your Own Bank, or I've read Infinite Banking, or I've read The Power of Zero, or I've read Tax-Free Retirement. I've read all these things, cash value life insurance. I like, oh man, I kind of get it, but it's weird. It's because it's a life insurance policy, but there's a cash component to it. And really, how can that help me invest in real estate? And I will tell you, I've been doing this a decade. It's still in my brain. I get it, but I just didn't really internalize it till a couple of years ago. I had a real estate deal on the table and I needed some money, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Go to my savings account, my Schwab investment accounts. And this was right when interest rates had started to go up. And I thought, well, I could walk up to the bank and get a loan at like 8% or 9% or whatever it is at. And I went, hey, wait a minute, Chris, you talk to people about this all day long. You have a life insurance policy with a guaranteed capped interest rate loan of 4%. So I essentially have a bank with money sitting in it that I can take out at 4%. And so what that looks like is this. You're cruising through the real estate listings, you see a duplex, you see a house, and you go, you know what, that would be a good investment. The ROI on that's going to work. That's going to make me some money. I'm going to get some cash flow, some blue sky. It's going to be a good part of my portfolio. Oh man, problem is I need $50,000 to close on this transaction. Well, where do we get that money? I mean, you can secure it against your house with a HELOC. You can dip into an IRA and take taxes and penalties. You can take a loan against your 401k. And I'll tell you as we go through this, just know this up front. In an overall financial plan, I like almost every tool available. It's just a tool. Every tool does something different. So a HELOC does something different than a whole life insurance policy, does something different than cash, does something different than a variable universal life, right? So the story just kind of keeps going. Where do I get this $50,000 to do this deal? Well, I can go to the bank. I'm sure Jamie Dimon sitting in his throne room at JP Morgan, will lend me the $50,000. But kind of the downside of that is at some point, I'm going to have to pay back. And let's just say your total overall interest on this is 10%. So I kind of thought, well, that stinks. They're going to give me $50,000. I'm going to have to pay them back $55,000. Well, there goes $5,000. So here I am working hard, to try and get this thing right here to give me cash flow. And yet all of a sudden now I'm giving this bank my cash flow. So nobody likes that. So in its simplest form, and what dawned on me was, what if you just, and maybe I'm slower than everyone on this Zoom or everyone who's watching this. Maybe I'm slower. When I thought to myself, well, I could walk up to Chase Bank and I could borrow that money, or I could log into my life insurance policy, click an online loan request form, and have the company send it to my checking account. I went, oh, that's why he named it Be Your Own Bank. Gotcha. Because now the cycle is the same. Money goes up here, deal gets closed, cash flow starts coming. But now instead of paying $55,000 back to Jamie Dimon, I'm paying $55,000 back to myself. And where the phrase infinite banking comes from is once I've got this bank filled back up with money plus additional premiums. So if I had 50 and it goes to 10 and then it fills back up to 50 and then it goes to 10, you can keep the loop going. Money keeps coming to you, you keep doing deals, money keeps going back to your bank. So hopefully that's helpful for you to conceptualize like the 30,000 foot view of what's going on. What I've found is people really want to spreadsheet it and get down with the microscope, and I love doing that as well. But this gives you a good high level view of kind of how that infinite banking concept works. So here is an actual policy, and I think looking at an example is going to be much more effective. This is a great lady. I met her when she was 60 years old, and I went through all the different types of life insurance, and I have everyone under the sun in my firm. I've got whole life, I've got universal life, I've got term life, we do long-term care, I've got disability income. If you want insurance from any company, we can write that contract with anyone. But I have this pesky thing where I believe people deserve to be treated right, the right way, and I want their money to go as far as it possibly can. And I said, well, Deborah, you're 60 years old. So this is policy year 5. I said, you're 60 years old, back up here. This is going to be $22,000 per year because of some internal things that I can get in more detail with. I won't, but, and she said, well, listen, Chris, that's what I want. I want those features. I want a death benefit for my niece if I die. I want cash, tax-free cash accumulation because she's kind of a prepper. She doesn't love the government and she doesn't believe in 401ks. And she goes, and frankly, I've got $2,000 a month to throw at this thing. So let's go. So I said, okay. 4 years later, on the line above this that you can't see, she came to me, and 4 years later, so I said, took a $35,000 loan previously. If you could see policy year 4, you would see $35,000 coming out. This was the first time it really dawned on me how powerful this tool is, because she was building a new build up in Duval, Washington, north of us. And funding dried up because interest rates went up, lending got harder. And she was like, holy crap, Chris, I'm hosed. I can't finish this project. I need like 35,000. She was getting a permit for a sewer. Ridiculous. Don't move to King County if you want to build. So she said, I need $35,000. So in policy year 4, she took $35,000 out. Now picture that line, that money's coming to her. She did the house. And I said, okay, well, you need to start paying those loans back. She's like, well, I can't right now. I said, okay, but we need to start. The next year, here's policy year 5. She came to me and again said, I need the maximum amount of loan that I can take. So she took this $23,000 loan. So if you add those up, she took about $58,000 in loans. And at the time, she had paid about $70,000 in. And it completely pulled her rear end out of the fire. She finished her project and she just emailed me the other day. She's listing it. So it's not necessarily the fun, sexy, buy a duplex like build, but it's a really good example, A, of how it works, and B, the impact that it can have. So I ran this illustration saying, well, we got to get to paying back loans. And this is when I went from kind of an academic believer to this is one of my favorite tools. With no loan repayments, you can see here her account value continues to grow until the day she dies. So that's a real world example of how the cash value life insurance policy works. That $58,000 went out to finish her new build in Duval. She put it on the market. She's going to sell it, make some decent money. And she can always come back and use the cash value again over here as she needs it. She can pull it out for retirement. She can die and leave it to her niece. She can stop making premium payments. There's all kind of stuff that you can do. Here's another style of distributions that you can take from these. This is actually my policy now because I found myself itching to go get money out of it. I've just managed to find money other places and I haven't. I'm personally putting in about $24,000 per year. And when I'm 66, the policy, now this is when I took my policy. should spit out about $132,000 per year tax-free until I die. Here's the projection I just ran on my current policy because I've been in it 3 or 4 years now. That projection's up to 147,000. So just showing you that on that Swiss Army knife, maybe the spoon is you using the cash value in a couple of years to do a duplex. Maybe the knife on there is like, hey, I don't need that spoon anymore. Now I can just go and create this income stream in retirement. And then this over here is going to be your kids and grandkids' favorite column. That's what they get when you check out. So 2 real world examples of how this is working. If you have questions on the whole life for the real estate for the infinite banking, make sure you write those down, ask them in the Q&A, or you can always follow up with me, or they can put you in touch with me later. Now, Zach knows this. I found a dead horse, and it's called tax-free money a long time ago. And even though it's dead, I will continue to beat it with a stick until everyone's tired of hearing about it. I will keep this super short and simple. The other main reason why I put cash value life insurance in people's overall financial plans is because the tax rates in the United States are at effectively all-time lows. No matter how bad you think your tax situation is, understand that it was 3 times worse 60 years ago, 70 years ago. Now, 70 years ago, the national debt was, I don't know, probably around a couple hundred million. World War II ran the national debt up to around a couple hundred million. The national debt today is $40 trillion. That's trillion with a T. So that's a bottomless pit of debt that we'll never get out of. There's only 2 places where the government gets money. That is spending less and taxing more. So if you're saving into pre-tax 401ks, pre-tax IRAs, you are basically putting money in a bucket that Uncle Sam gets whatever piece of they want at the time you retire. If Congress decides the day you retire to jack up your tax rates back to this, and you take $100,000 out to go on a vacation, you're going to take the $100,000 out, you're going to stroke a check for 50 grand to Uncle Sam. So real estate centric investing, love it for that. Tax-free wealth accumulation, love it for that. But there's some important things to get right and to get straight with this particular strategy, this particular tool. I had a lady, and she's in the Navy, and I was in the Marines, and so we had that going for us, and I really care about my fellow service members. And she said, she was actually stationed in Guam, and she said, I have this whole life policy, I've been in it 3 years, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not acting as advertised. I went to take a loan. I can't take as much as I thought. I have to pay it back. There's all these things going wrong. And she said, well, I just don't like it. So I talked to her about it. We got her set up with a different, much better plan. And she came back to me and she said, I think I'm going to go with this other whole life company, which I can represent, and it's totally fine. And I would have written the business for her. And I said, yeah, but remember that whole life you were in before, this is the same thing. But she had watched some TikToks or some Instagrams or something on somebody like jumping up and down talking about how whole life is going to change your life. The truth of the matter is, life insurance, real estate, stock market, unless you bought NVIDIA with your paper out money 15 years ago, or unless you bought Bitcoin, right, with every penny you had 5 years ago, there's no get rich quick. So you really have to go clear-eyed into any investment, knowing that that's how it works. One of the biggest, I don't want to call it a lie, but somehow the message has morphed on cash value life insurance from, hey, you're building a bank that you can borrow from later, to make one premium payment and you can take out as much money as you want tomorrow. Somehow it's done that. I know exactly. I mean, I have a suspicion why that is, because it makes for quick commissions for salesmen. The bank must be funded. It is in Nelson Nash, the guy who started this whole thing, Nelson Nash, in his book, said the bank must be funded. You must build up that account value. Now, I happen to live in Seattle, where I have clients who make 5, 6, 7, 800 grand a year. I have a client who works at Boeing and his wife's at Microsoft. And he literally looked at me, I'm doing the rest of his investments, and he goes, dude, my wife just got another $50,000 check from Microsoft. Like, what do we do? I said, oh, I don't know. First of all, great problem to have. They're doing 150 grand a year. Okay, that's awesome, but the bank must be funded. Honda versus Ferrari. This is where everybody like really wants to go to what company, what policy, what, and those are all important questions. And internal costs are important, and interest crediting methods and indexing. That's all very important. Just understand at the end of the day where you put your money can get you there at different speeds. And then finally, just from an overall standpoint, and I think Zach, again, is probably one of the best examples of this. What the truly wealthy people that I work with, they use leverage wisely. And again, life insurance is just kind of another leverage tool, right? It's something you can borrow on, pay yourself back on. I've seen people do premium financing cases where they borrow millions of dollars from a bank. Biggest case I've ever seen was about $4 million a year premium. They put $4 million a year in, and they borrowed $3 million of that from the bank. They put $1 million of cash in themselves. This right here is something that I'm very passionate about. True diversification is not a duplex, a single family, and a small apartment complex, or Boeing stock, Microsoft stock, and NVIDIA, or a whole life in a universal life. That's not true diversification. Asset class diversification and tax diversification are the two most powerful tools of all the wealthy people that I come across. And even in helping Zach, and that's why I was so impressed with just his level of thinking, is because he came to me and I said, well, dude, you make all this money in real estate. Like you kick butt at real estate. Like, why would you even want a cash value life insurance policy? And he said, because I need to be diversified. And he really truly understands that. And there's very few people that I talk to who actually kind of internalize that. The truly wealthy have multiple income streams, work that W-2 job, buy that duplex, get all those things going. And then finally, this is something that I still really, I've really internalized in the last couple of years. Zach mentioned I do real estate. I actually have raised funds and syndicated real estate and done all that kind of stuff. In the last 2 years, the hardest time of my life is learning that I'm not good at it. I mean, everyone is fine, but my real estate money now goes to rent to retirement with Zach, and I helped him set up his own personal policy, right, to take care of his kids and help build tax diversification and all that without getting too personal. But so those are really the top points. And then this right here is this is a little bit deeper financial planning stuff that I kind of get into with just different types of money that you can do. What we're talking about here today is the insurance, some structured notes, things that are safe, risky stuff over here, that stuff that can lose money, and then alternatives. And again, the point here is your money should not be piled into one of those. Your money should be spread out across all three. So I would suspect we're coming up on just question time. I told myself I'd keep it short. I haven't seen anyone fall face down yet. If you want to reach me, if you have any particular questions about your own policy or how the concept works or some projections or whatever, you can reach me at that email address. You can text me at that phone number. I keep it on me. I run my own business. So if you want any other information, I've got some quizzes and stuff at my website that talk more about retirement planning and that kind of thing, but you're free to reach out to me there. And then finally, one day, I had a millennial, and I love millennials. One of them told me to get a YouTube a while ago, and I started it. And I've actually had some people reach out and tell me they found some helpful stuff on it, which makes me feel good. So